evening, and thank you for joining us. Well, the Bobcats have been here before, Carly. We've been down 2-0, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes too, though, just besides the game tonight.
There is. I don't think my phone has stopped ringing since I came into the station this morning, which is a good thing. There's been a lot of feedback, but there's also been a lot of feedback from the town of Whitecourt. And for the first time in a little while anyways, we hear from the mayor of Whitecourt, and I have a feeling out there that the people in Lloydminster are going to be very interested in what he had to tell me today.
Well, hopefully our loss isn't going to be their gain. And
exactly.
Hopefully the Bobcats can pull it out of there. Got to pull out that win tonight. And Gerard, pretty nice day out there today. It seemed like the first time that it was not super cold for what seems like a month to me, but what can people expect this evening?
Well, actually, it should have been a little warmer with the exception of some of those winds that keep blowing over. But as we mentioned yesterday, people... we're expecting some a little later on this evening. We'll keep our fingers crossed about how much we get in terms of what it looks like. But let that not trouble your hearts in terms of we're going to the game, we're going to the game. That's about it. Let's look at what we're dealing with right now, people, because it's -9. It could have gotten maybe to that -6, but it just didn't. 74% humidity. The wind's out of the south-southeast at about 11 kilometers an hour, and the wind chill is down to -14 at one point. For most of the day, actually, it was in the 20s. Let's look across the region to the Lakeland. They're at -4, so they even got a lot higher. But we're seeing cloud cover building up already, particularly in the Battlefords, and we'll tell you about the precipitation for later on this evening, and there's some as well for tomorrow. Meantime, Jacob, it's back to you.
RCMP in Loon Lake, with the assistance of the Pierceland RCMP and Police Dog Service from Meadow Lake, arrested a wanted man who fled a halfway house earlier this year. 41-year-old Michael Brian Bearboy was unlawfully at large on Canada-wide warrants and left the halfway house on February 26th. Mr. Bearboy had been serving a 7-year sentence for manslaughter from an incident that happened in Loon Lake in 2006. He was arrested on the Makwa-Sagegwin First Nation without incident yesterday evening. The continuing turmoil in the Middle East and especially Libya has prompted an increase in oil prices and a corresponding jump in prices at the gas pump. But industry analysts are cautioning that the current ramp-up is an artificial inflation in the market and is not truly connected to what's happening overseas. Midwest residents have certainly noticed higher prices when they gas up. There's been a 20-cent per litre increase in the past 2 months. But considering that Libya only accounts for between 1% and 2% of global production, that loss of supply shouldn't be driving oil prices so high.
Now, if you lost Saudi Arabia, the entire Persian Gulf, yeah. Would there be a shortage in product? Yes, there would be. Would there be a spike in price? Yes. But you'd have to lose all of that production in order to make an impact because there's excess supplies everywhere.
The current wave of pro-democracy movements throughout that part of the world is what has investors on edge.
What's driving up the price of oil is fear. Because the Middle East and Northern Africa produces about 30% of the world's production of oil. If these changes were to spread throughout the region, that's what is making people nervous.
Companies like airlines that depend on oil try to lock in contracts to prevent getting burned if the price continues to soar, but this in turn helps to increase prices. And the increase won't just be at the pump, but will have ripple effects through the global economy to the point where people are spending too high a percentage of their income on fuel.
And they don't have enough money to buy other stuff. So unless we burst this commodity bubble at some point, it will burst on its own when the consumer runs out of cash, and I don't think that's in anyone's interest.
And there's a nasty downside to having the cost of consumer goods rise in this artificially inflated fashion.
So once prices go up for consumer goods, whether it's through transportation costs or for raw materials, if the oil price were to drop, those prices will not come down as fast as the oil price, if at all.
High gas prices have been proven in the past to have only a small effect on rates of consumption. But even in Western countries like Canada, there's a breaking point, and it starts affecting lower and middle income families first.
But there is a point where people start to cut back, and it's because they can't afford, they have to choose between filling up their car and paying the rent.
But when it comes to the sheer amount of money pouring into oil commodity futures, COTA is convinced that the price cannot continue to rise, and once it crashes, it could be worse than what we saw in 2008, when oil went from over $140 to $38 a barrel almost overnight.
You're going to get overcorrections. So you'll get an overshoot on the way up, you'll get an overshoot on the way down, and just hold on to your pants as we go through this wild ride.
Power transmission lines are a hot topic across Alberta right now, and the province is looking at expanding new lines in the Lakeland region. Last night, ATCO Electric held an information session in Lacorie for landowners concerned with the plan to build 50 kilometers of transmission line. The line is to run from the Bonnyville substation to a new proposed substation in Bourque.
They want the public input to see what If there's anything that is really going to hold up a line, if they have to change it, or what would cause them to move it to a different area.
And this is just the beginning of consultations with property owners for ATCO, which is expected to take until the end of 2011.
They'll have to talk to every person that's affected by it for miles around here. So all of our family and friends are affected, our neighbors, so with any line that goes through here.
ATCO declined to do an interview, but will be holding an information session in Bonnyville March 15th and in St. Paul on March 16th. The ongoing push from the Alberta multiple sclerosis community to initialize clinical trials of the liberation procedure took another step forward last night. As Jack Haskin reports, several of the members of the Lloydminster MS Society are behind the effort, but feel that more could be done.
Members of the local MS chapter have been waiting a long time to share their opinions regarding the controversial liberation procedure, otherwise known as CCSVI, with provincial representatives.
The general membership has really come out in support of the CCSVI treatment. We have a high number of people within the chapter that have had the surgery, and we wanted to recognize them.
Daryl Gregory of the Alberta MS Society toured other cities across the province this past week. The reception he received last night differed from what he's experienced in other meetings.
What we found is that people are pretty more upset, I think, than some of the other communities we've been in. I think probably more people have had the treatment here and have seen some positive results, and so they have a higher level of frustration because they know some of the positive results that can come from it.
Local resident Sheldon McPherson had to travel outside of Canada to get the procedure done. He is now living a fuller life because of it.
Results are excellent. I mean, I used to have constant chronic fatigue and balance issues, which I still have, but much less. And those two results were immediate, pretty much as soon as I got up off the table.
Upon hearing the concerns of Lloydminster residents, Gregory says that the Alberta MS Society will push harder for clinical trials for CCSVI.
We haven't spoken loud enough, so I think if we express more strongly the viewpoints of people living with the disease, that hopefully government will listen.
However, some members of the MS community aren't convinced.
I think it's going to be more of the same, and that's the biggest frustration for me. But I mean, I guess we just do what we can do and get out here at these meetings and say what we can say.
Another meeting regarding the liberation procedure will take place at the Lloydminster MS Society office on March 31st. Jack Haskins, Newcap News.